This is the inaugural episode of Strange States of America, and I am your host, Stephen Wilbert. We are going to take a trip through America and explore some of each state's paranormal stories, whether it be ghost stories, haunted locations, cryptids, or UFO sightings/encounters. America has thousands of these stories embedded into the fabric of our collective consciousnesses. So with that said, we're going to take our first trip down south to Alabama. Okay, before we get into the stories of this state, let's look at the history of Alabama. Alabama is in the southeastern region of the United States, bordered by Tennessee to the north, Georgia to the east, Florida and the Gulf of Mexico to the south, and Mississippi to the west. So, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the South. Alabama is also the 30th largest by area and the 24th most populous of the states. Alabama's nickname is the Yellowhammer State, which it takes after the state bird. Alabama is also known as the Heart of Dixie and the Cotton State. The state tree is the longleaf pine, and the state flower is the camellia. I think I said that right. Alabama's capital is Montgomery, and its largest city by population and area is Huntsville. Its oldest city is Mobile, founded by French colonists in 1702 as the capital of French Louisiana. Greater Birmingham is Alabama's largest metropolitan area and its economic center. Originally home to many native tribes, present-day Alabama was a Spanish territory beginning in the 16th century until the French acquired it in the early 18th century. The British won the territory in 1763 until losing it in the American Revolutionary War, like the rest of the country. Spain held Mobile as part of Spanish West Florida until 1813. In December 1819, Alabama was recognized as a state during the antebellum period. Alabama was a major producer of cotton and widely used African American slave labor, which, anybody in elementary or high school, unfortunately I don't think they're teaching it as much nowadays, but, anybody knew that, unfortunately, part of history. In 1861, the state seceded from the United States to become a part of the Confederate States of America, with Montgomery acting as its first capital, and rejoined the Union in 1868. Now with the history lesson over, let's move on to the spooky shit. I found an interesting story about a tree. Well, although it's not exactly paranormal, it's just really odd. The Boyington oak is a historic southern live oak in Mobile, Alabama. The story of the Boyington oak begins with Charles R.S. Boyington, who was a young printer who arrived in Mobile from Connecticut in the year 1833. The 1830s were Mobile's years of rapid growth and expansion. Boyington was known to be a frequent gambler and lived in one of the many boarding houses that dotted the city. On May 11, 1834, Boynton was seen accompanying his friend and roommate Nathaniel Frost, whom Boynton supposedly owed money, on a walk to Church Street graveyard on the outskirts of the city. Frost was later found stabbed to death and robbed near the cemetery. Boynton was the obvious suspect in the murder. Of course he was. I mean, he was last seen with the guy. But steadfastly professed his innocence even after he was found guilty of the crime. He was executed on February 20th, 1835 for the murder of Frost and buried in the northwestern corner of Church Street graveyard in the Potter's Field section, which, if you don't know, that's where murderers, people that got executed, poor people were buried, if they couldn't afford it. But yeah, they were buried in Potter's Fields. Prior to being hanged, Boynton reportedly stated that a mighty oak tree would spring from his heart as proof of his innocence. An oak tree did eventually grow from the grave. Although the grave and tree were originally inside the brick wall surrounding the cemetery, the wall was moved back from this section shortly after the turn of the 20th century. Today, the Boynton oak stands just outside the cemetery wall on the edge of Bayou Street. Although the tree grew through his grave, it was entirely too late to prove his innocence in this plane of existence. I mean, I just thought that was really odd, He proclaimed that, if he was innocent, a tree would grow through his heart, and it did. I found that really odd. Just a little, I guess, local folklore. That's what I would call it. Moving on to a more paranormal story. Nothing gets children to come home at night quicker than a story about a child snatching ghost. Alabama's Hugging Molly would do. For children in Abbeville, Alabama, she was downright terrifying. Legend claims that she is a phantom woman that would appear to children, but only at night. She would squeeze them tightly in an embrace, hence the name. Then she would scream in their ears. She never harmed them, other than perhaps causing some ringing in their ears. The figure was reported as being much as 7 feet tall, wearing dark clothing and a wide-brimmed hat. Why does it sound like that chick from Resident Evil Village? The big vampire chick everybody fucking sexualized. That's what she sounded like, especially with that fucking hat. Being 7 foot tall. Was she thick? I don't know. I didn't find her very descriptive, but that's what she sounded like, fucking Lady D from Resident Evil. I just thought that was a funny comparison. One version of the story claims Molly was the ghost of a woman who had lost an infant who dealt with the tragedy by hugging local children. Another states Molly was a professor at the former Southeast Alabama Agricultural School who was trying to keep students safe by keeping them off the streets at night. I mean, that sounds like a ghostly, motherly figure. Today, Abbeville residents can remember hugging Molly by venturing downtown and stopping in a cafe named for the Phantom. Hugging Molly's is set in an old pharmacy complete with a soda fountain and offers such treats as sandwiches and Molly fingers. Hugging Molly is located at 129 Kirkland Street in Abbeville. In case anybody ever wanted to go, eat at this place. There isn't anything like getting squeezed in in a bear hug and having your eardrums took to the limits by some unseen spirit. How about a mysterious disappearance? Picture it. It was a hot July afternoon in 1854. A farmer named Orrin Williamson, or other names depending on the telling, was walking on his farm near Selma. Reportedly, Williamson's wife and family were on the front porch of the farmhouse. Armour Wren and his son James were the neighbors of the Williamson family. They were passing by in a buggy when they too saw Williamson walk into the field. The Wrens stopped to wave hello, and as Williamson waved back to his neighbors, he suddenly disappeared, vanishing without a trace in the thin air. Wren rushed to the spot where Orrin Wilson last stood, soon joined by Mrs. Williamson and her child. They scoured the area hoping to find the lost farmer, but it was simply grass and land, as if Williamson had never been there. What just occurred was impossible to explain. How could a grown man completely vanish in front of his family and neighbors? With the sudden realization and shock from what happened to her husband, Mrs. Williamson fainted and was taken to the local hospital. When word of the mysterious occurrence spread throughout the town, 300 people gathered and went to the field to look for Williamson. The crowd carefully searched for the entire area. Bloodhounds tracked every turn. Hours passed, and darkness came, torches lit, still no sign of the poor farmer. The next day, more citizens from communities outside of Selma came to participate in the search. Volunteers went as far as digging into the ground, where Williamson disappeared only to find bedrock. Eventually, the search parties gave up. Orrin Williamson was never found dead or alive. That's really strange that he just up and vanished with no explanation, no trace, not even, part of his clothes found, nothing. The next spring, investigators returned to the site and oddly saw a barren and dry patch of grass near where Williamson last stood. When Mrs. Williamson learned of this, she related to them that she and her son kept hearing her husband's voice calling out for help for weeks after he disappeared. So it was like, I don't know, I don't want to say ghost, I don't want to say, it was him in some kind of limbo. They just said, hey, I heard his voice, so on and so forth. But every time they ran to that spot, they could not find him. She said she kept hearing his voice until it slowed down and gradually faded away. So whatever got him just, I guess, overrided his essence, or, it completely enveloped him. But, it stopped. Some investigators developed theories to explain the mystery. One hypothesized that an unstable universal ether was responsible that could disintegrated matter. I guess disintegrate. Yes, that is what it is. Another claim proposed a magnetic field transported the missing man into another dimension, which that would explain the fading voice. The different dimension thing. Maybe it was just weak enough to let his voice go through. Juanita Rose Violini included the incident in her book Almanac of the Infamous, the Incredible, and the Ignored. Violini narrated two other similar events in 1880 and 1885. The 1880 disappearance occurred in Tennessee. The farmer who vanished was David Lang. Like Williamson, Lang sat on the front porch with his wife and children, walked to a field, and was never seen again. In this case, David Lang's daughter, Sarah, wrote about the incident in great detail. Isaac Martin's disappearance in 1885 tells the tale of a man vanishing in a farm field in Virginia. The New York Sun posted an article about the oddity, but it was not known if there was any eyewitnesses. Ironically, Ambrose Pierce, who wrote a satire, which basically is making fun of, he wrote a satire to the event, also mysteriously disappeared more than 50 years later under different circumstances. I mean, I just found it odd that, not only did this Williamson guy disappear, but a couple other people did too, and in a couple other states, like Tennessee and Virginia. Tennessee, I kind of understand a little close, but Virginia ain't as close as Tennessee. It's just odd that they never figured out. And then the dude made fun of it 50 years later, and he disappeared. I think that one was just a coincidence, but you never know. But you shouldn't make fun of people that just up and disappear. Otherwise, karma's a bitch. She gonna come back and get you. Alabama has many more stories of the paranormal and the strange. Way too many to be mentioned in a single episode. We might circle back and get some more. But, yeah. I hope you all enjoyed this dive into one of the South's prominent states. And make sure you tune in next time, for we are going way up north to Alaska. This is Stephen Wilbert. I'm signing out. This has been Strange States of America, or shorten that because that is a mouthful. SSA, if you want to refer to that. I haven't started up the TikTok yet. I'm planning on it, and the Instagram. I'm planning on that too. Keep an ear out. I'll let y'all know when that happens. It's probably going to be underneath Strange States of America podcast. Make sure you go like and subscribe and, follow, all that good stuff. I'll see y'all next time.